Let's spend a few minutes talking about vocabulary and terms, and interject that or intermix that with video, multimedia, audio, and how that connected with vocabulary can really enhance a struggling learner and those with disabilities' understanding of those key terms. Now, first of all, vocabulary. Where's the challenge? Well, vocabulary for a lot of learners, especially those struggling and those individuals with disabilities, will be challenging because of the expectation of understanding it, being able to make the connection, allow it for the main idea, and of course then generalize and apply it. Now, if we also think of the current learner that tends to be very interconnected with the media, the YouTube generation or the Instagram generation, or it's going to be something with video, audio, and that mobility aspect here in the future. That's a critical element in terms of kind of connecting the two. Now, why would we want to do that? Well, for struggling learners, again, the ability to actually understand the vocabulary is critical. And we also understand in terms of the context that being able to visualize something, hear something, being able to deal with multiple modalities and learning styles can really assist an individual make connections to the term and then how they're supposed to apply it. Now, what does the research show? Well, the research shows in the use of video and audio multimedia, an individual can break down the sequence, break down the steps. They can allow them to process the information and have guided practice with information. It allows the individual to go back to that information repeatedly and see it at their pace, all critical components and all successful. Now, with vocabulary, let's think of the context of a term. Let's think of habitat. Habitat could be for, let's say, a giraffe or a llama. And let's say that we have a fair amount of students in that class that have been to the zoo. They've seen the habitat for a giraffe. It was a cold day, so they were inside, and the zookeeper was talking about the weather and the elements there. Now, the rest of the class, or the classes this teacher is teaching, doesn't have that background, doesn't have that context, doesn't have that connection. So when it comes into terms like the habitat and other terms affiliated with that giraffe or llama, they won't have that same context, they won't have that same connection. Well, that's where the video, the audio, and the multimedia comes in. Let me break down two examples for you. Let's think about the idea of photosynthesis. So I know about oxygen, I think. I know about water. I know there's sunlight, and I know there's plants, and I've seen all that. But what if I were to break down that term? And to break down that term and make connections to the suffix, the prefix, generative aspects of that term, but then contextualize it and connect it with visuals, with a video walking me through the process, pulling out aspects of that term to make me understand what the photo component with the synthesis component and how that all ties together. And then allowing me to practice and take a look at that and see it at my own processing of language. And again, if I want to see it repeatedly. Let's go with another term. What about bacteria? Bacteria is a loaded term, has a lot of impact. What if I gave you that bacteria term in a visualization of a kitchen, something we're all familiar with, and I showed you what lies underneath a very dirty tabletop, even though it may be cleaned with a sponge, but that sponge may have had bacteria on it, spreading more bacteria. But then maybe I talk to you about good bacteria that's in the kitchen as well. But again, I visualize that and I'm breaking down the term. And in so doing, the individual is able to hear it, see it, the word itself, the parts of the word, and again, how it all interconnects. Now, how would a teacher do something like this? Well, to begin with, they would identify the terms that they would see as the critical terms. And then they would begin to break down the elements of those terms and the prefixes, suffixes, the root word and how that interconnects. And then they would identify some images. Nothing critical, could be coming out of the textbook. It could be other images that are representational to the context of that environment. And then from there, using a variety of different apps or technologies, they create a brief scenario. They could audio record it themselves, create it into an audio file, a video file, a podcast. What about getting the student engaged in this process? Again, creating video, a lot of students are doing that on their own. They then work with the creation. The teacher guides them with what to create. And they are then now having their own tool. They're learning in that process. And by the way, by using that creation process, it's something they'll be able to apply later on. So either teacher-led or student-led, at the end of the day, you have a vocabulary term that's fairly interactive, that has video and audio embedded in it, and allows for that learner to further understand and comprehend.